I'm the Executive Director of Tennessee Equality Project. This is the third Advancing Equality on the Hill Day for us this year. And the reason we do 3 is because bills move at different points during the legislative session, with some just getting started in April. And in fact, one of the bills that we are tracking as a part of the slate of anti-LGBTQ bills, there are 6 of them, one of them is just starting in the legislative process this week. That is House Bill 1274. That is the bill that requires the Attorney General or the state to defend school districts that engage in anti-transgender discrimination. Student Charles Key was going to be here to speak on that. He cannot, so I really want to start with his voice and his statement. And he says of that bill, "If there is one thing I hope you take away from my words today, it's that whether you see it or feel it yourselves, all this bill will do is create more pain and more challenges for individuals who already face so many in their day-to-day lives." And speaking specifically of the trans community, he says, "We are here, we are valid, we are important parts of your schools and communities. We are worthy of safety and privacy. And we ask that you consider our lives in your decisions today by voting against House Bill 1274. So he may be available to testify against the bill later today, but could not be here today. But I just felt it was so important to start with that voice, because this bill is hitting us late, and it is hitting us so hard because it is one of the worst bills on this slate of hate. We have a number of speakers here today. We're glad so many of you could be here from around the state. I know in particular we want to welcome folks from the Lakeway area, the Knoxville area, the Memphis area, Northwest Tennessee. We've got folks from around Middle Tennessee, so we have a good geographic representation today. I want to thank all of you for being here. But to give us an overview of some of the issues that we're facing, we have Kate Oakley from the Human Rights Campaign and Hope Jackson as well.
Hi. My name is Catherine Oakley, and I'm the State Legislative Director and Senior Counsel at the Human Rights Campaign. HRC is the nation's largest organization working for LGBTQ equality, with 3 million members across the country, including more than 79,000 here in Tennessee. So we work across the country, partnering with state groups such as Tennessee Equality Project to track and oppose anti-LGBTQ legislation and support good legislation when we get to do that in state legislatures while pushing to advance LGBTQ equality. And for several years now, we've seen a really major uptick in the amount of anti-LGBTQ legislation that's been passed, with hundreds of bills being introduced over the last several years. Most of these bills have a common theme. They seek to license discrimination against LGBTQ people, or they seek to make the lives of LGBTQ people so difficult that it effectively prevents us from being able to live normal lives. And sometimes these bills do both things at the same time. It's important to call these bills what they are, which is discrimination. They are informed by misunderstanding and dislike of the LGBTQ community. The legislation here in Tennessee is no different. In Tennessee, we have lawmakers who are finding new and innovative ways to come at the LGBTQ community. And these are not, to be clear, these are not serious proposals that are solving real policy problems. These are attempts to discriminate against the LGBTQ community in, as I said, new and innovative ways. Tennessee does not need to be on the cutting edge of anti-LGBTQ legislation. It is choosing to be on the cutting edge of anti-LGBTQ legislation, and instead it could be a welcoming, supportive place that reflects the welcoming, supportive people who live here in the state of Tennessee. Right now, unfortunately, the legislature is considering bills that would target trans Tennesseans. bills that would harm children who are in the child welfare system, who are simply seeking their forever families. And as a result, these bills could also negatively impact the business and the business situation here in the state and the economy of the state. And all of that is for one reason, because Tennessee wants to be on the cutting edge of anti-LGBTQ legislation. Tennesseans neither want nor deserve this kind of legislation, and now is the time for all of us to continue to stand against these bills and continue to put pressure on the extreme lawmakers who continue to bring these bills forward. Thanks again for all of you being here today. Thanks again for Chris for having us. And with that, I'll introduce my colleague, Hope.
And I apologize. Can you give me your name and how to spell it again, please?
Yes.
So you're with.
Catherine Oakley, Cathryn, then Oakley, like the sunglasses. And I'm the State Legislative Director and Senior Counsel at the Human Rights Campaign. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. Hi, my name is Hope Jackson, and I'm an Associate Regional Field Director with the Human Rights Campaign. For months, HRC has joined Tennessee Equality Project and many others here in the room today in Nashville to monitor and fight back against the anti-LGBTQ legislation that makes up Tennessee's Slate of Hate. Unfortunately, the past few years, the Tennessee legislature has been near the top of the list of states to introduce the highest number of anti-LGBTQ bills. Just this session, legislators have introduced a bill that could allow businesses to discriminate against LGBTQ people, a bill that would put Tennessee transgender folks at risk of arrest from using the restroom that aligns with their gender identity, and a bill that would make it harder for LGBTQ prospective parents to adopt or become foster parents. And that would mean kids would be waiting for their forever families will have to wait even longer. These bills are meant to make Tennesseans feel less than equal. In our work in Tennessee over the years, we have seen the opposite desire from the folks here in the state. People don't want to harm their friends and neighbors. They simply want to ensure that everyone is given an opportunity to succeed. Right now, these bills are setting Tennesseans and the state of Tennessee up for failure. These lawmakers are supposed to look out for all of us, not just some of us, and they certainly shouldn't be using their power to make life worse for LGBTQ Tennesseans. We're so grateful to Chris Sanders and to the leadership of Tennessee Equality Project, without whom none of our work here would be impossible. It would be impossible. We're so thankful for you all for showing up each and every time we ask you to, and for our partners here in the room today. And now it's time for Tennesseans to stand up against these bills, like they have many times before, and for lawmakers to stop attacking LGBTQ Tennesseans simply because of who they are and who they love. Thank you.
Now what we'd like to do with the program is examine these issues quickly from three different lenses. One is a business impact lens, one is a religious leadership lens, and one is a civil liberties lens, and we have excellent guests to help us with that. So if we could start with the business lens, Joe Woolley, the CEO of the Nashville LGBT Chamber, will now speak to us.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, everybody, for being here. I joked with Chris that we should chop down a cherry tree and we would have, like, mass amounts of people show up. So, I mean, there was some. But, I mean, we laugh about it, but this is no joking matter. And, there was discussion in the community of we can have 65,000 people sign a petition to save trees, but we are under attack up here. How do we engage the community to make them realize that this impact is far more important? I'm not saying the trees aren't important, but far more important, and we've got to have everybody speaking out and taking action. Thank you, TEP, Chris, HRC, all of our community partners and allies for continuing to drive this. We're working as hard as we can with our coalition of members. We have 384 Middle Tennessee businesses, from individual networking members up to large corporations. We also are here representing Tennessee Thrives. We have a steering committee seat on Tennessee Thrives. That's a business coalition of over 480 businesses from across the state that have signed a pledge that any type of discrimination is bad for business, bad for Tennessee, and they oppose it. Tennessee is on the brink of becoming the next North Carolina if we're not careful. Tennessee can't afford to face the economic consequences of passing laws that discriminate against LGBT people. Legislation that would embolden discrimination against anyone would send a message to conventions, corporations, and meeting planners to look elsewhere. And it truly is happening. They are looking at going elsewhere if these bills pass. The number of calls and emails that I had after last night's House vote of the adoption bill, people are concerned. So maybe as these things continue to move, corporations and citizens will wake up and really start to pay attention. And what we need them to do is speak out. I'm very proud of Alliance Bernstein speaking out 3 weeks ago, issuing a statement against discrimination at a press conference right here. I'm working with several other corporations that are ready. I'm hoping they will do that soon, but let me assure you that they are working behind the scenes as much as possible to stop this legislation from moving. They are concerned about it. They're concerned about attracting and retaining the best talent that's out there, and these bills make it impossible for them to do that. It makes Tennessee a place that people do not want to move to. It makes them scared of Tennessee, and we can't have that right now. We are booming as a city and as a state when it comes to economic development, growth, industry moving here. It's a great place to do business. This makes it not a great place to do business. 49% of meeting planners, these are the people that plan the conventions that come every day to Nashville, said that they would boycott any state that passed this type of legislation. PCMA and ASAP, the convention organizations, have reached out to the CVC, the Convention and Visitors Corp of Nashville, stating that they're concerned. And we have this thing called the NFL Draft coming at the end of this month. It's the biggest event Nashville will ever host to this point, and we're looking at the World Cup after that if we do a good job with the draft. It is on their radar. They are watching what we are doing here at the Capitol, and that could affect the draft. We implore the Senate and the House to really take a look at this legislation, to think down the road, to really think, is this necessary? To ponder what's more important, the business climate and the reputation of this state, or appeasing your base. We've got to be really careful where we're at right now. So that's our message from the business community, and as these go forward, we will be in touch with you when other corporations are ready to speak out more strongly.
Thank you, Joe. And all these folks will be available for questions at the end of the press conference. Next, I'd like to introduce our partner, Amy Mello at Freedom for All Americans. She has been so helpful in growing our list of religious leaders and clergy across the state who have spoken out against these bills. Over 125 clergy from all parts of Tennessee, east, west, and middle, have spoken out, and I'd like to introduce Amy for a few words and then to introduce her special guest as well.
Thank you, Chris, and for everything that the Tennessee Equality Project does. My name is Amy Mello, and I'm here representing Freedom for All Americans, the bipartisan campaign to win non-discrimination protections nationwide. Bipartisan support for LGBT freedom is growing across the country, and yet here in Tennessee, a small group of lawmakers appear determined to advance an anti-LGBTQ agenda that is out of step with Tennessee values. These bills target the marriages, families, and safety of Tennesseans, neighbors, families, and members of the LGBTQ community statewide. Americans from all walks of life and elected officials from both sides of the political spectrum have been growing in their support for treating LGBTQ people with dignity and respect. According to polling from the Public Religion Research Institute in their 2018 American Values Atlas, almost two-thirds of Tennessee residents, 64%, support laws here in the state that would protect the LGBT community from discrimination in housing, public accommodation, and employment. LGBTQ people are our friends, neighbors, family, and co-workers, and every one of us deserves the same opportunity to go about our daily lives without fear of discrimination simply because of who we are. Now, yesterday, the House passed House Bill 836, which would create a license to discriminate for child welfare agencies that would allow them to turn away loving, qualified couples. We know from other states that have enacted or tried to enact similar policies what the consequences will be. Children pay the price when qualified couples are blocked from adopting and fostering. When potential parents are turned away, there are fewer prospective homes and placement options. Similar laws have already been used to turn away qualified families. Jewish and Catholic families in South Carolina were turned away due to a similar law, revealing how widespread this discrimination will be if Tennessee follows this path. Passing this legislation would also negatively impact our state's reputation, which would most certainly spark negative reverberations statewide, especially on employers' ability to attract top talent and the quality of life for the existing workforce in the state. We've seen time and again that discrimination comes at too high a cost. No one wants to see Tennessee suffer the consequences of state-sponsored discrimination, as we have seen in other states like North Carolina, where the economic impact was in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Business leaders across the nation, including conservative leaders, agree discrimination is bad for business. And strong businesses lead to strong communities. When everyone is free to live their lives free from discrimination, our communities are stronger and our state is healthier, more vibrant, and a thriving place to live, work, and to raise a family. And that is why we urge the Tennessee lawmakers to reject and stop these attacks on LGBTQ people and their families. Thank you. Yes, and I am pleased the support from faith leaders across the state has been overwhelming, and I am especially pleased to introduce Rabbi Rice.
Good morning. You don't need to clap. This is not my usual venue, but do not worry. I'm not going to give a sermon. I do like that people are taking notes. They don't usually do that when I speak. I'm going to start unconventionally. I say Shalom Alechem. You say Alechem Shalom. Ready? Shalom Alechem. Oh, that's very good. In these parts, that means may peace be upon all y'all. And I say all y'all because that means everyone. And I do represent a coalition not just of people at our community of Congregation Micah in Middle Tennessee, but really of other faith leaders, over 125 of them, as well as other fair-minded Tennesseans, all of whom oppose discriminatory legislation. I am a rabbi, so I do look back sometimes to our tradition, and I found that the great Rabbi Simlai of the 3rd century of the Common Era is recorded in our scriptures as having said, the beginning and the end of Torah, or what we would call the Bible, is loving kindness. And Rabbi Simlai taught that thousands of years ago and thousands of miles away. And here we are, needing this reminder that no one should face discrimination. Certainly not, based on prejudice against their ancestry or bigotry against their sexuality and or intolerance against their religious ideology. In his address to the Jewish community at the Union of Reformed Judaism's 47th biennial, the great late Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. stated that it is tragic that so often in history, men have used the Bible and religion to justify their prejudices and to crystallize the status quo. And that was in 1963. And here we are today, still trying to remind our state government of the importance of separation in church and state. Because our state Senate has before it legislation that discriminates against the LGBTQ community. Legislation has already seemed to have passed in the House, and so we all, many of us, stand before you and our state legislatures in opposition to all discriminatory legislation. We want to talk specifically about this bill that would allow adoption agencies to refuse to place children with loving families if the parents are gay, if the agencies object to the faith practiced by the parents. Now, there are many families within our own Jewish community, our own congregation, that were formed by adoption. And as parents, myself, my wife and I, this issue is very important to us. If this law were to pass, Tennessee's most vulnerable youth, kids in our foster care system, would be harmed. And Tennessee now has, over 8,500 children in the child welfare system who need temporary or permanent homes. And that's, I believe, up like 11.2% since last year. And Tennessee already does not have enough families qualified and willing to care for these kids. So it really breaks a lot of our hearts that some lawmakers want to allow agencies to exclude qualified families from opening their hearts and their homes to children in need. The religious exemption in these bills means that an agency could refuse a child to a family if the prospective adoptive family is gay or if they practice a different faith from the agencies, regardless of whether they are otherwise qualified. It was mentioned that in South Carolina that recently implemented this kind of license to discriminate, and already there are numerous stories of Jewish and Catholic prospective parents being turned away because of their faith. The bottom line is that discrimination and exclusion will make children wait longer for loving homes. And no child should be denied a family because of discrimination, certainly not based on the state. The freedom of religion is deeply important to me. Our community is very grateful, and we feel very blessed to live in this country, especially given the history of the Jewish people. I am able as a Jew to stand here before you fully protected by the First Amendment. But freedom of religion does not give us the right to harm or to discriminate against others who don't share the exact same beliefs. And our religious freedom should never be used to deny a child a safe, loving home or refuse service to someone because of who they are. Our religious freedoms does not give us the right to harass a transgender person for simply going about their daily life with the dignity that all people really deserve. So it's a simple religious and secular value. Jesus seemed to know it. Buddha seemed to know it. Our Jewish tradition put it like this: what is hateful to you, do not do to your neighbor. And this legislation is hateful. It's not who we are as a state, and it's not who we are as Americans. Treating others with the way we want to be treated is about protecting all of our individual freedoms. Jews and Catholics and LGBTQ and people are, all of them, no exception. All of us command the same basic protections as everyone else, to live our lives in safety and in privacy and in dignity. And so as our state continues to grow and welcome others, we are here to remind our state legislatures that the gay community and the Jewish community and the African American community and the whole all community, they're all our friends. They are our neighbors, as we said. They are our coworkers, they are our family, and we are all God's children. So when it comes to being able to earn a living, or to having a place to live, or being served by a business or a government office, or growing your family by an adoption, we all deserve to be treated fairly. Now, the Jewish people are all commanded to love and protect the stranger. That is, the ones who other people might think are strange, because they're different. And they're different, and therefore they're considered vulnerable. So our spiritual community congregation, Micah, seeks all good people of faith who want justice for all y'all. That's why so many other faith leaders from diverse religious traditions have signed this pledge opposing this anti-LGBTQ slate of legislation, because we know that discrimination of any kind is wrong. The Judaism in America that we all cherish affirms the love of all humanity. It respects the spark of divinity in every person. And so we call upon our legislators to search their hearts, where we believe the message of respect of the fundamental dignity of all people lives, and to remember to treat others as they want to be treated, including and especially those who might seem strange or different. We urge our Tennessee state legislatures to reject this mean-spirited bill and instead to embrace justice and compassion, and that they might heed the words of this sage of mine from yesteryear, Rabbi Simlai, and recognize that reverence for tradition is no virtue when it promises injustice and human suffering. Thank you for your time and for listening.
And finally, as promised, giving us the civil liberties lens is Hetty Weinberg, the Executive Director of the American Civil Liberties Union, and then we'll take some questions. So thank you, Hetty.
And I will be brief. I couldn't help but last night when listening to the debate and seeing the very unbalanced vote that passed House Bill 836 to think about words I read many times when I was in graduate school in social work, which is in the best interest of the child. And that was clearly it was very absent from the debate, certainly for those who voted for this discriminatory, mean-spirited, unacceptable legislation. I think we need to think about that all the time, be it a trained social worker, a parent, an aunt, a grandparent, and certainly an elected official. What is in the best interest of the child? And certainly HB 836 is not. Limitations on adoption eligibility, we know, are not only discriminatory, but they create barriers for the vulnerable children, the babies, the teenagers who are in need of homes. Turning away good families simply because they don't satisfy one agency's religious preferences would, as we know, deny thousands of Tennessee children access to the families they urgently depend on and need. And I just got a report, and I want to read it to you. It comes out of the Casey Foundation. It's a data snapshot released today, April 2nd, from the Annie Casey Foundation as part of its Kids Count project, and it uses data from child welfare systems across all 50 states and D.C. over a 10-year period to look at how placements for young people in foster care have changed. Because remember, the goal is you get a kid in foster care, and the goal, hopefully, is that sometimes those parents are able to adopt those children. The report finds that Tennessee has lagged behind other states, placing 77% of these young people and families in 2017, compared with 86% nationwide. While most states have increased the percent of children in care placed in families since 2007, Tennessee's rates dropped slightly from 79%. Just under half of teens in Tennessee custody were with families in 2017, which is a drop from 58% in 2007. So we have children waiting for families, and yet we see this legislation that has moved through the House, and we hope to stop in the Senate, just penalizing families who want to embrace children and penalize children who want to be embraced by families, regardless of sexual orientation, regardless of religion, regardless of any other characteristic. The focus should be on what is in the best interest of the child. Today, as was said earlier, there are approximately 8,558 children in Tennessee's child welfare system. So removing potential applicants from the pool of families who want to adopt solely on the basis of factors unrelated, again, remember, unrelated to their ability to parent and to protect the child, dramatically reduces the number of finalized adoptions in our state, as well as, and I underscore, as well as perpetuates inequalities in our child welfare system. Child placing agencies should not be allowed to discriminate against prospective adoptive families based on the family's religious beliefs. As you know, ACLU has long fought to defend freedom of religion, and we believe one of the most fundamental values of this country. However, religious freedom does not give anyone the right to impose their beliefs on other people, nor does it in any way justify harming or discriminating against others. And that's what Senate Bill 1304, HB 836 does in fact. The nation-leading child welfare experts and adoption organizations, as you well know, are staunchly opposed to adoption policies that discriminate against LGBTQ parents. And in 2018, the National Association of Social Workers, the Child Welfare League, the North American Council on Adoptable Children, and Voice for Adoption filed an amicus in the Third Circuit Court of Appeals supporting, and this is important because there's, cities and states often do things that are the right things, supporting the city of Philadelphia's right to enforce anti-discrimination laws against agencies that use religion to discriminate against LGBTQ parents, writing that these kinds of dangerous policies, quote, and this is important for our legislators to hear, hinders the primary goals of foster care placements, which is the child's safety and well-being and stability that leads to the child having a permanent family. Creating many opportunities for children in need to find loving homes is not partisan, and that's what we need to remember in this state. Child welfare agencies should be focused on the need and the best interests of children in their care, not their own religious faith and not their biases. And I want to end with a statement from a conservative Florida legislator who shut down attempts to pass a similar law in his state in 2015. And I underscore conservative because, again, this should be about what is in the best interest of the child, not what one's political perspective is or not what one's own bias is. It's about the children. And he said, there have been absolutely no indications that same-sex adoptions or same-sex foster care placements have ever had any negative effects on children. I, he said, don't want to be the barriers to those children having loving, permanent homes. And that's what the Tennessee policy should be about, providing loving, nurturing homes for the children who needs family, and not to pass laws that are clearly discriminatory and unacceptable. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Hetty. At this point, we will take questions. I know we're getting close on time now, but we can direct